Hey, movie lovers, welcome back for another Anatomy of Movie here at Popcorn Talk. Today we talk about Ron Stallworth's incredible journey as he infiltrates the KKK. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk, we talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's Anatomy of a Movie.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. God bless true American movie reviewers.
That's good.
Indeed. We have Dimitri Panos.
Hey, movie fans, what's happening?
And taking the place of Marissa Serafini, for this anatomy at least, we have Nakia Richardson.
Hey guys, what's up? Thanks for having me.
Of course, Nakia does some shows over at AfterBuzz TV, over at Black Hollywood Live, and we're honored to have her be part of the show.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you guys.
Thanks.
And I, of course, am Phil Svitek.
You are? What?
Yes, indeed. I am. Although I may have a twin somewhere else. I don't know. We'll find out. Anywho, a couple of administrative things. Right off the bat, number one, if you're just joining us for the very first time, we're not a typical movie review show. We, yes, talk about the storylines, we give our opinion and so forth, but we go a little bit deeper. We go into the how and the why. We give the backstory on production, and of course the box office and things of that nature. You know, the cultural impact. And especially with a movie like this, you can't not talk about it and not talk about the cultural impact. So lots and lots of stuff to discuss there. Number two, just by that description alone, you can probably tell that we're spoiler filled. So if spoilers aren't your thing, pause this, go see the movie, because if you haven't done so, shame on you, and come back, listen to us. And thirdly, if you want to follow along, we have our research posted for you. It's in the description. It's a little PDF. You click it, and you can follow along. It's fun.
Fun.
There you go.
Nice.
Good times.
Learn some good stuff. Before we dive into any of that, we must first know your perspective going into this movie, what you thought of it, and all that. So, guess first, ladies first. Kick us off.
My perspective going into the movie, I remember when I first heard about the movie, and I think it was like a mini trailer at first. I was really excited because I'm a big Spike Lee fan. I know a lot of people are not big Spike Lee fans, but I'm from Brooklyn, Bedford-Stuyvesant, grew up on Spike Lee, so I was really excited. Then when I seen what the movie was about, I was a little confused because I didn't know it was a real story. So I didn't know if this was going to be a comedy. I didn't know if it was going to be satire. I was a little confused, and then the geek that I am, I went on Google and I started looking up the real story. I learned that Jordan Peele was behind it, and I'm like, okay, this is going to be amazing. So I was really excited going into the movie.
And what about going out of the movie?
Going out of the movie, it was a lot of emotions. I'm like, Spike, what the hell? Because the movie, I loved the movie. It's the end that kind of gets you, it pulls on your heartstrings a little bit, because though this happened in real life in like 1979, you're taking back and you're like, oh, it's a movie, some things were added in. But when he hits you at the end, you're then hit with, okay, this is actually really happening outside. This really just happened. We actually just lost a young lady last year. These are things that are really happening. People are still the same way. Nothing has changed. So leaving the movie theater, I was a little emotional, a little sad. I loved the movie, loved what I saw, but
Awesome.
it's just really upsetting.
Well, we'll certainly talk about the ending, won't we? Dimitri, what about for you?
Yeah, I mean, look, this movie, Spike Lee hasn't made a real feature in a little while, and he's proven that he's back, if not better than ever. This movie makes my top 5 thus far. I think it's really tremendously talent. Script-wise, I think it's laser precision social commentary. And regarding the end, too, I think that throughout this entire movie, and let's not, the movie itself without the ending that's there, you know, it's very subtle in its way. It uses, this movie takes place in the 70s. It is really in the bizarro world that it's a true story. And there are target words that are peppered throughout the entire movie that we hear today a lot. And so when a particular word or maybe a catchphrase or a phrase pops up, you sort of, huh? Because this is in the 70s, but it's something that we're hearing today. So I find that if you take the ending out of the movie, I still think it's a magnificent movie that just by the way certain things play out within the film and certain pieces of dialogue that, like I said, it's peppered throughout.
Yeah.
And I know that it's done very deliberately, but it's not like it, to me, it wasn't a movie that beat you over the head with it. It was just certain things, it just made you go, huh? It's like, oh my God. Well, and it makes you think, I'm hearing those words today.
Certainly the use of the word great.
Well, great, America great. There and so for me, that was the brilliance of this movie being, again, it's in essence a period piece. So, but then when you add, so the whole movie is very, very, it's subtle in that approach, and then you get to the end and it goes from being subtle to being very blunt. Yeah. There is no denying that thread now becomes like it's a brick to the head. And it's not a criticism. In some cases, when you do something like that, it could say, well, what do you think? I'm stupid? Like, I can't figure that out for myself or whatever. So, and some people would say, yeah, it's taking advantage of the audience's intelligence, but not here. It was definitely done for a more visceral, emotional impact. And I think that any moviegoer who pays attention to movies of drama or whatever, when you're picking this up, you can see it. But then when the pieces come together and you get the ending that you get, it really does. It's an emotional, visceral experience that makes one angry, makes one emotional. And I think that's part of the brilliance of this entire film. It's also, I think, one of Spike Lee's, I think it's one of his greater films in which he is able to draw out performances from people, and again, it proves that you don't need necessarily stars to make a movie work, right? I mean, a lot of the people here, outside of Adam Driver, perhaps, I know some of these people are on TV here or there, but they're not household names. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree.
And he pulls he coaxes out, I think, some of the best performances that an audience can see this summer, period. And I think that helps. And again, with like I said, the socio-commentary screenplay was just brilliant.
Yeah. I'll sum it up in this way. The ending, never have I seen more people stay for the credits of a movie that wasn't a Marvel movie. It's not because they weren't staying there for a post-credit scene or anything like that. They were there because they had nowhere else to go. They were shocked and frozen.
Yeah.
And there's one of the things I want to kind of begin with as an entry point, it's not required viewing, but sorry to bother you. We talked about it last week. Obviously tackle kind of similar things, and I think we're at a great time where we can have both movies. But it's a nice entry point to talking about this movie, because both are satirical, but it's that elongated laugh where you laugh at the beginning, very ha-ha, and then it tapers off because something hits you in a deeper level of like, oh wait, this is not funny at all. In fact, it's the opposite of funny. And I think both movies have that. So when you're talking about like some of the comedic stuff, like for me, the interaction with David Duke and the real Ron in this movie are some of the more funnier scenes. I mean, him saying like, but you know what? I hate them goddamn.
Mm-hmm. It's the best. I think one of my favorites, and then the real Stallworth touched upon this when he said he talked to David Duke, and when David Duke said, I would know, because usually, I'll just say black people say the ara and the you ara. So that was hilarious, where he was like, are you sure you wouldn't be talking to a black person on the phone? And that stood out to me because my great-grandmother says, well, she did say ara or refrigeradera. So I started laughing like, wait, is that a thing that was happening in the 70s where people were thinking that? Where, well, people in the KKK thought, no, this is what they sound like. This is how I would know. So that definitely made me laugh. And then it brought me back and I was like, okay, no, this is really real.
Well, there's a lesson in that, when you kind of start to break down the layers of racism, the fact that language in itself can be, there's a certain way to speak and there's a certain way not to speak. Right. So to me, this movie highlights the dangers of creating dichotomies in any sort of facet.
Yeah.
And it creates these things, and because it says one's better than the other.
Yeah, and I think the brilliance of the script, and again, I mean, we'll talk about the ending, I guess, when you bring us there, but it also, because it wasn't just about racism against a color, it was racism against a nationality, it was and such. And again, one of my favorite scenes, I believe, is a scene with Adam Driver, where he's talking about how his character Flip had grown up. He goes, I grew up Jewish. He goes, but we never paid attention. He goes, I was never bar mitzvahed. We never went to, I never went to Hebrew school, and we didn't celebrate Hanukkah. It was just no big thing. But he goes, now though, he goes, now I'm going to go back and I'm going to study the faith, and now I want to learn more and gain more from it. And it's an interesting thing in this movie, because once you have something that you've grown up with that you may not have, maybe you took it for granted, your faith, whatever it may be, but when somebody is so hell-bent on taking it away from you, you're like, what the hell are you, what, huh? It's like, well, and to me, that was a great, it was a great scene, and to me, it accentuated and made more powerful Adam Driver's performance, because he couldn't even be like a slow boil. He had to keep everything, that character had to keep everything in check, and then quickly turn around and say, oh yeah, I hate the Jews, and really another summer strong performance for him. Last year he was in Logan Lucky, which I thought he was really good. And so outside of his Star Wars fame and Girls, like, he is picking, I think, some amazing roles. And that's not to say everybody else in this movie was just not, I mean, everybody was just super strong, and they delivered characters that you cared for or hated for. Yep. And you didn't hate characters because they were not like, there wasn't just like the stereotypical, like, he's a bad guy, I hate him. Like, you hated these characters because of what they stood for and how they performed.
Such an amazing job.
From all around. And I have some stuff we'll talk to for Grace about his performance too.
Well, I want to get before we,
my God,
I want to get your thoughts on Flip Zimmerman.
Well, Flip Zimmerman, was a huge Girls fan, so I already knew, like, Adam Driver, but I never really seen him in Star Wars. I already knew he was in Star Wars, so I was really excited that he was going to be a part of this movie. When I did a little research about the movie to see what was real and what wasn't real between the real Flip and the fake Flip. It was really interesting. Like, I loved Flip's character. I loved Adam Driver's performance. I loved him and John David together, because while they were performing, I honestly forgot that Adam Driver was Adam Driver. I forgot that this is Denzel Washington's son. They did such an amazing job. And I read that because I know that Adam Driver's not really Jewish in real life, so I would have loved to know, like, what it was like to, like, if he was Jewish, to have to play this part, to be a Jewish man and hang out with the KKK and say really hateful things. Because the real Stallworth, he just sat on the phone, but he sat on the phone and he didn't have to face, because he couldn't talk with the KKK. Whereas Flip had to be in with them and infiltrate them and sit in their homes and talk about the nasty, disgusting things that they had to do. And I thought that the Flip character was amazing. And I think that Adam did a really good job.
Well, one scene in particular, I mean, the fact that, what leads him to hold on to this is that it's in constant opposition. It's not like, by Walter, he's welcomed right into the gang. Or the organization, as we say.
Right, the organization.
But Felix is not welcoming whatsoever, and he's the one that's testing him. And in that scene when he gets basically interrogated of, like, do you believe in the Holocaust? And it's like, and he not only has to sort of justify his own means for being in the KKK at that point, but the fact that he has to use an event like that and twist it as an argument
that it happened.
Yeah.
That it happened, and that he hates it, and why it's, quote, good that it happened.
Yeah.
It's not that it happened and, like, dude, you're an idiot for denying this. No, you're an idiot for denying this, and you're so unracist for denying it. You should be more racist by embracing it.
Had me on the edge of my seat, actually, that scene. I was like, wait, what? How's he going to flip this? flip.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, it goes to I think the power of the writing.
Yeah.
And it's not just the words; it is how that scene was performed by both actors, and yeah, how do you flip? We've actually, yeah, I think in one way, in some semblance of going through life, you have heard about the Holocaust deniers, right? And here is a blatant Holocaust denier. I don't think it happened. And it's like, what do you mean? And then it goes to, what do you mean it didn't happen? What are you, some idiot? Of course it happened, and it shouldn't be. It should have been more. And that flip and the way that it was performed, you bought into it. And at the same time, you could look at Adam Driver's eyes and go, this guy's fucking nuts.
Yeah.
Like, this guy's like, he's fucking nuts. And how do you suppress that? But again, through performance, it's like, we see what Adam Driver's doing, and to your point, you're like, well, how's he going to get out of this one? And then he's like, the way he flips it around, you go, oh, that's pretty clever, but you're still like, oh my god,
It's sick.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's the rug being pulled out from underneath you of like, oh well, it's all just a Jewish conspiracy.
Right.
Okay,
Like,
you
no.
have a comeback for everything, don't you? That is the most ignorant of things.
Right.
When I look at this movie, I think it's very deliberate. All the things that we've been bringing up are very deliberate, and so I can't imagine this isn't. There's almost 3 very representative levels to the KKK that were presented, and maybe more if you want to look at it that way. But I look at Walter, Ivanhoe, and Felix, where Walter's the, I don't know, quote unquote, ideal racist.
Yeah.
Then you have Felix, who's just extreme,
Yeah.
and then you have Ivanhoe, who's just basically an idiot.
He's just there to be
Right.
there. And that's what I thought. It's like you have the calm one who, if you were trying to talk someone into not being racist, you can talk to Walter, and Walter may be the person to be like, I can kind of see where you guys are coming from.
I think he's just too stupid to even be converted the other way. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that was his life being brought up, and that's the way that he is, and he was too dumb to get out of his own way, meaning that where everybody else, like, you're right, but then you get, but there is a fourth, like there's Topher Grace's David Duke, who is different than all of them, but he embodies factions or fractions of each of their personalities, except for the dumb one.
Yes.
So, he's the culmination of these 3 people. He's got the hate, but he also has the charm. He's got the level-headedness, and on top of that, he has the charisma that none of them really have as much as he does. So there are definitely like 4 factions there. But again, I think it's important to note that this, it goes above and beyond color of skin. This really does go through like race, and that's what was really frightening, and how, like, being thrown, Adam Driver being the white guy, like, for some reason, Felix just like zeroed in on him and said, "You're a Jew."
And that's why I said, though he was the most extreme, he was the one who actually paid attention the most, because I felt like they were too stupid to pay attention to both voices not being the same, where Felix caught on. Felix was already paranoid. He's like, are you a cop? Like, he was already questioning him.
Well, for me, the takeaway really was this: like, it's very interesting to note that the one glue that holds all these people together is their racism.
Mm-hmm.
Because
their hate, yeah.
Take that away, none of these people would be friends.
None.
I really believe that. But that just goes to show the level that racism can unite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and you're right, because I don't see Walter being friends with Felix, like, when you take that out of it. Because Walter, on appearance anyways, right, can, let's say, blend in, where Felix doesn't blend in. He doesn't want to blend in. And then idiot Ivanhoe. Well, I mean, what a name.
Right. Ivanhoe.
So, he just, like, he's the guy you go drinking cheap beers with, and he's just, he's an idiot. So they wouldn't be hanging. I mean, the idiot might be with Felix.
Yeah.
But Walter himself, take out this aspect of racism and hate, Like, he's just your average worker-bee guy trying to take care of a family or whatever, and I really can't do it this year because I'm busy, so yeah, you're right. They wouldn't be friends, and I think too what the movie does is it also shows when during the ceremony when they were ordaining these people, they're taking off their hoods. Many of them were just everyday looking folks, right?
Yeah.
So the infiltration to me is what I found to be scary, and something that this movie brings up in this, again, being in the 70s, it frightened me to hear David Duke talk about, well, we're going to put this position in, we're going to put this person in this position of power, and we're going to, and this is how we're going to infiltrate, and we're going to get what we want, which is a great America. We're going to get it. And so I grew up reading and learning about the KKK. Bad. KKK, bad. But it wasn't until, let's say recently, there were a lot more things being come to light. And this movie really brings that stuff to light, is how subversive and infiltrating they are, and how powerful, just outside of being bad people.
Well,
that's scary too.
I want to get your perspective on this. Again, we talked about the friends, but now let's talk about the couple of Felix and his wife. For all intents and purposes, she's just trying to be a good wife and be supportive, number one. And I really feel like in any other movie, if you stripped out what they're actually talking about, that scene of them just being, quote, loving together is a tender scene.
In the bed? Yeah.
And the scary part when you talk about that is the fact that, they're a loving couple and they have those ideals of being a loving couple. And if this was like a rom-com, this would be a fun scene to watch, except it's not, because it's underhanded by something deeper. And I want to get your perspective on it.
Yeah, it was really interesting because though you're watching this movie and you're watching this movie about really bad people and this couple, with what they do in the movie, they kind of humanize the KKK, I guess you can say. Because growing up, for me, just listening to stories and family members and talking about the KKK, I had one idea what they looked like, what they would be like, where they're from. But when you actually watch this movie and you learn about a David Duke and you see who he is and how he was in politics and the way he looked, he didn't look like the stereotypical KKK person. Then you see this couple, this quote unquote loving couple, and you're like, wow, you kind of forget, okay, some of these people have families, they have kids, they're married, they love each other. They just have really bad ideas. So to see them, loving each other in the bed and cuddling with each other, and her just saying, I love you and I just want to do anything for you. I will do anything for you. That was really intense for me because I forgot what they were talking about. And then I bought it back and I was like, oh my God, they're talking about doing something really bad.
Right. And it normalizes evil. It normalizes hate. And I think that's what really accentuates or punctuates that scene.
Yeah.
Because she's she's a wife that, at least from an attitude perspective, that any man, would hope to have a wife that's as supportive and such, and a man who is supportive. So to your point, there's the love there, but then it normalizes the evilness of it all.
Yes.
Because it's so subversive and it's so in their hearts that they just talk about it as if they're talking about a grocery list. And that's what makes that scary.
It's scary.
And she wants to do this. She, and it's like, oh baby, you're going to get to help me out. And, and it's all, and it's on that thin line too of satire, especially the way that actress performs it, but, she becomes first, she's put down, right? And then she builds up, and then when she's doing her deed, she just puts on this mask of of hatred.
Yeah.
So she, again, strong performances from people that, no offense to these, I'm giving them compliments, but she was nobody I'd ever really seen before, and you grew to really hate. You thought she might be a little ditzy.
Yeah, you were like, oh, I feel bad because she's the wife that he's putting down. But then as the movie goes, you're like, wait,
yeah, I made some Krabbies for you. I made some, it's like
I'm like,
you're like, holy
I hate her now too.
I hate her really, yeah, because she's just as vile.
And what makes the moment that we're talking about of them together so ominous is that until really the very end, we don't know the plan necessarily of what they're plotting. So to give her an assignment that it's the special assignment, this could be anything.
Yeah.
So it definitely takes that into account. Now,
Ashley Atkinson too. She was the one that played Connie. And she was.
She did a good job.
She was great.
Absolutely fantastic indeed. For the role,
not
as a person. Speaking of which, I want to go back to something that you said, Dimitri, about infiltrating and getting people into the White House and politics in general, which was a deliberate play on their part. The real story takes place in the late 70s, but they wanted to put this in the early 70s specifically for that reason. When Nixon's being reelected, we're in the Vietnam War and things of that nature. Which is why when he's being interviewed, Ron's asked, "What are your thoughts on Vietnam?"
Right.
So I thought that did work really well to bring that stronger together.
Yeah, and again, I think it's one of those things that it's sort of sublime. That if you're watching the movie and you're paying attention, it's just like you sort of kind of go, "Huh?"
It's one of those things where you're like, "Isn't this happening today?"
Well. Yeah, you go, huh? Because they do make this big point about Nixon, and then it says, we need to get this moving, or what? And you just like, There was another thing too that I'm going to bring up that something happened so recently. It was so recently as this week, right? That there was no way when they were writing this that they could have. This definitely was not strategically put into the movie, but there is a scene in the movie in which. One of these people refer to somebody as a dog. Okay. And I was like, okay, there's no way they could have, that would be looking into the future. And okay, I want those powers, but just to benefit myself and make myself rich, but I would share the wealth. But I was like, okay, that's like, okay, that was scary to me because the events hadn't unfolded for them to be able to integrate certain things. But again, it's a word that today, there were a lot of times where my ears like went, huh? Wait, why? I'm hearing this today. Yeah. Why? And it's like, wow. But that was one thing in specific that I was like going, oh, okay. I've heard a lot of talk about this past week. And here it is in the movie being used in that derogatory way, and you go, well, for all those people who are, again, I don't mean to be CNN here, so forgive me for being a little bit political, but it's a socio-political movie. It just made me go, well, okay, if they were using it for a movie that takes place in the 70s, yeah, of course it's racist. Like, you don't have an argument anymore. Like, because these events happened this week. This movie was filmed a year ago.
Right.
They had no idea what was going to happen and or be said. And I was like, oh,
that's
okay.
creepy.
Yeah.
Because it's just one of the things that just shows you that the language that is being used today is just the nasty language that people may have picked up in their homes and when they lived with their racist families.
And it's still being used.
And it's still being used today.
Right.
So you're absolutely right, because when I was watching the movie, there were certain keywords where I was like, what? Huh? Yeah. And these are things that people would say that I read about in my history book or we heard about in movies. But the fact that someone's tweeting these words and people are power and talking like this, you're like, whoa, that's a little creepy.
Yeah, it really is. And that to me, and that's why I say you take the ending that's currently in the movie, it still works for a thinking man's movie, right? And I'm not saying that audiences are dumb. Please don't misunderstand me. But it was purposeful what Spike Lee did with that ending and why.
Well, a couple of things before we talk about the ending. One thing that I want to kind of point out that that might be relevant to this argument or conversation at least. David Foster Wallace, and there's other people too, but he had a term for like people's natural default setting, their natural way of thinking.
Right.
And it's essentially a means of saying you're not actually thinking, you're just sort of going through the motions. And what happens is when you're not, for example, his thing was like, if you don't actually stop to think, you're in traffic, you're gonna be pissed off because that's your natural default setting. When you're in traffic, it's shitty, so I'm pissed off and miserable. And so when people use these words or think these things, it's because they're not really taking the time to actually think. Right. They're just defaulting to, as you pointed out, Nakia, throughout, something that they've just been raised with and never really questioned.
Yeah.
And I think that is the scary part. And
it's a normal way of life.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, without questioning it, go back to Socrates, an unexamined life is not worth living type of thing. Which this movie, when you talk about the thinking man's version of it, the fact that we open up with Alec Baldwin, first off, kudos to him to be so, I don't know, brave is not necessarily the word, but his image is of like this great fine person, and to represent something so heinous, right?
Acting. It's called acting.
And that's amazing.
He did a great job.
Amazing. And the fact that it was Alec Baldwin, because even today, Alec Baldwin and his beefs with who the president is today, and Alec Baldwin being so open and speaking about it, I thought it was amazing that he opened up with him and what he was saying. I'm like, this guy's a great actor, man. I mean, he's a legend. He's Alec Baldwin, so.
Yeah, his deep voice just cuts right through, and it's amazing for all the wrong reasons. But this isn't the first time that Spike Lee's kind of satirized or reworked Birth of a Nation. He's done it through a short film called The Answer. I haven't actually seen it, but this was early on in his career. And if there ever was a moment that just, it's like, hey, I'm not gonna be subtle about it. This is where I'm gonna go fully, apart from like what's coming later. This was the moment, and he redefines what kind of Birth of a Nation really was. And I want to get your sort of history. Have you seen Birth of a Nation? What do you know about it? And then kind of now recontextualized in this form.
Wowzers. Birth of a Nation, I feel like as all black kids or all black people, you kind of are just taught about what Birth of a Nation is and what it was. But the first time I seen Birth of a Nation was in, I believe it was high school. And I went to an all-white Catholic high school, but we had a film course and our teacher was showing us the movie. And from what I've heard to actually watching it, because I remember we had to like do a term paper on Birth of a Nation, I was blown away, because I was like, this couldn't be real. This couldn't have been a real movie. So we watched it in high school, and I remember in college we also watched it for a film course, and we had to write a paper about it. So Birth of a Nation, since I was a child, has been in my life. It's been talked about and everything like that. Nate Parker tried to redo Birth of a Nation himself. Didn't really work out as great for him personally. When I seen it in this movie, I just thought it was great, because even when you watch movies like Get Out, and a lot of people didn't understand what Get Out was about until they actually watched the movie. A lot of people thought that it would be a comedy, and they didn't understand what Jordan Peele was doing. Mm-hmm. I love that Spike Lee put it in the movie, especially for say my friends who are a little naive, who thought that, oh, there's no such thing as racism anymore, and these things, get over it, or these things happened so long ago. And I love that Spike kind of hits you with it, because you're reminded that, no, it wasn't that long ago. It happened. It's still happening. So I thought it was amazing the way he put it in the movie. And I think they did their own voiceovers, because I don't think the movie was silent, but I think in his movie, Spike's, there were people voicing over it and doing little animations as well. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% about that, but the movie just took me through an emotional roller coaster. So seeing Birth of a Nation thrown in there, I was like, wait. And then I think there was a little scene from Gone with the Wind where Scarlett O'Hara is walking through.
Well, it's the pullback. It's the famous pullback.
So I was speechless, honestly. I was speechless. I'm sorry, I'm going off on a weird tangent, but it threw me. It knocks me out of my seat a little bit.
Well, the historical impact that Birth of a Nation has to filmdom, cannot be denied and such. And the use of it in this film, again, it's the juxtapositioning of it all. It's like, okay, it's the many ways that one can look at a movie. You can look at it for its historical impact and what it was back
Which
then.
is cross-cutting,
Right.
cutting into different scenes, all that stuff.
So, and you can look at it as that. But then, what BlacKkKlansman does is we have two scenes going on at the same time. the through line or the commonality of the two scenes is this movie Birth of a Nation. And in one scene, I forget what's the actor's name, the actor singer who's
You're talking about the speaker at the Black Panther rally?
Oh, Stokely. He plays Stokely Carmichael. Corey.
No. I'm talking about the singer. What's his name? Oh, I always forget his name. I'm sorry. He's the guy at the end of the movie while they're playing Harry Belafonte.
Harry Belafonte
as Jerome Turner.
Oh my goodness.
So Birth of a Nation is playing. It's playing through two scenes. One scene, we're at the Klan thing, and they're actually watching the movie, and they're looking at it as like it's like a Mel Brooks comedy. Okay. And then we have this other scene where Harry Belafonte is talking about the atrocities, and he talks about this movie. First of all, he talks about these certain atrocities that had really happened, and then how this movie has depicted this, right? Okay. And as he is bringing, and he specifically brings up Birth of a Nation, and he's talking about scenes, and he's talking about this scene, but prior we just got the stories about the hangings and the burnings and everything. And then we cut back to the KKK, and they're seeing the same exact scenes that we just heard explained as the overvoice. Yeah. And they're all like, again, they just think that it's high comedy. It's high comedy. And that to me, again, it was just a brilliant way, and it's the way in which people interpret film and how these stories are interwoven, and how it's interwoven in this movie, for good or for bad, right? It's whether I like a movie, you like a movie, or what, it's how it's interpreted. And can you say that the KKK is interpreting it wrongly? Yes. They look at it as true life, and this is standing up for us, where Harry Belafonte's use of putting it in his story is like, these are horrible times then, we're horrible times now in the 70s, and Birth of a Nation brought a lot of this to light. That to me is what was the most dramatic of these two interpretations of one piece of art.
From a filmmaking standpoint, it's interesting to note that it is in fact like the use of the cross-cutting is exactly what Birth of a Nation brought about. Yeah. So it's using everything and flipping it on its head. Yeah. Throughout the entirety. I want to kind of, since we've been teasing the end, I want to kind of get to the end, and if there's other stuff we can backtrack. But for me, this is how I viewed it, and this is the succession of events. And you guys can either disagree or we can come to something.
I already disagree.
Number one, so we're getting to the point where the bomb's there. She places the bomb. She places it at the car because she gets a little too nervous. Ron Stallworth gets to the scene, and lo and behold, things go wrong for him because it's like, okay, white cops beating up a black man. You're like, oh crap. But then it sort of turns and things start going their way. Like, okay, yay, high five, we stop this, great. And then it turns again where it's like, you know what, shut this down. It's like, wait, what? And then we go into the moment where, we get the racist cop who's been a thorn in everyone's side the entire movie. So yay for us, at least like we're doing some good and we're getting stuff from the inside. And then we kind of get this cool 70s blaxploitation kind of cutaway. We get them through the thing, but it leads us to the KKK. And then we go one step deeper. Then we go into Charlottesville, and you're like... Yeah. It was happy, it was sad, it was happy, then it was worse. And
made you cheer. When they got the racist cop, that scene to me was fantastic on a lot of levels, because number one, it was the first time that as a force they were all together. Yeah. From the Chief Bridges to everybody was involved in that. Let's call it the sting operation, right? Oh yeah, I got you. Did you get him? Oh, I got him too. And then the chief walks in and goes, I got him too. Come on, buddy, right? So you're like, yeah, all right. But then it goes to, well, hey, I thought they were all working together. They were all buddy. And it's like, no, we're gonna shut everything down, and you got to shred every piece of evidence that this ever happened. You're like, wait, what? Wait, you just wait, but you're a good, wait, huh?
You're a white American.
You're a white American.
It was so emotional.
It was emotional, and then you get the phone call, and he's on the steps, and I've seen way too many espionage movies, and I'm like, you don't answer that phone, it's a bomb. And then he goes in and he answers the phone, and then you have that is like great. It's a great historical moment. They could have just freeze framed that. Go to black, like, haha, they're all laughing at Baddie.
Nope.
No, and then you get the scene, and it's like, well, of course, because it's all out in the open now that these people duped them, and they're going to target them, and then you see the cross, but then it was the way in which that cross melded into Charlottesville, and you go, and then it's a brick to the head.
That's what it is. It was so emotional because you're watching this movie and you're going through so many of roller coaster of emotions. You're laughing. You're like, great, this is such a cool movie. And then you're like, oh, the cross is burning. And then you're like, whoa. So this happened last year. And that's what I started to cry. Because I knew I was going into this movie. I knew it was a real movie, but I knew it was satire and I loved the movie. But then, like, at the end, I laughed because people were starting to get up to leave. And then, like you said earlier, Phil, we were literally frozen. And everyone started to slowly sit back down. And everyone was like, wait, what's happening? And then Spike shows the clips. And then you see the real clips of the car going into, like, the crowd. You see the tiki torches. You see all the real stuff. You see footage of Donald Trump speaking. And that knocked me out of my seat, where I think we were frozen because even when the credits go up, the audience, we were still sitting there because we were confused, and in a good way.
Well, yeah, it's just everything that happened in the Charlottesville scene, we actually had just watched play out in the actual movie. When you think, right? I mean, everything.
Yep.
Everything that played out in that movie, the history of itself, it just came back. And whether it was through dialogue and whether it was through violence and this ignorance and this hate-filled, and then you realize where it comes from. And you realize, and everything that they said about putting people a position in power, it just all comes home. And again, you don't necessarily need that in the movie, and it's not a criticism of it because the movie works well without it, but when you put it in there, it's shocking. And this is why I was just telling somebody, like, this is the kind of movie that is not only going to be taught in movie classes, but it could be taught in a social studies class, in a history class, whether we like it or not, whatever your opinion is, it's happening to us today, and this is how this movie resonates. And it was really scary because I walked out of the movie going, how can any African American person be on that person's side? Like, I just don't understand. Like, I don't, because it's not hidden. And this is why I think there's such a division in the world. And again, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be a political show, but this movie, this is what this movie is about. And there's a reason why Spike Lee chose to release it on the date that he did, because it was a year anniversary.
That's another thing, because I don't know, for me, I had forgotten that fact, and then I put two and two together. I was coming down off that thing, and then today's August 12th.
Yeah.
This is not...
And they tried to, no, this movie, you should release it later in the year. And he said, no. He, really put his foot down. So, again, I just walk out and I'm, going, how?
How?
How? Because, we are living in a world today where it's not subversive. It's very out there.
It's out the closet.
But in more ways than one. It's in public. It's in social media. It has emboldened other people. And again, folks, it is. It bottom line is. And what are we doing? What are we doing? And when I hear, and I've know for a fact, neighborhood I live in the theater that I go to, I know that there are African Americans that still support this. And I'm like, how? Like, how can you? I mean, like, if you watch and again, this movie is only, yes, they had to, based on a true story, yes, they embellish a couple of things here, but thematically, the movie is true to its form. Like, it's not a lie. It's not fake news. The story happened. Stallworth exists. He's a person. David Duke. And it wasn't like they were invented, or it's not like they were doing the Quentin Tarantino approach of rewriting history. Yes, they moved the dates back in the 70s. Okay, big deal. They embellished a character here and there, but the story happened. Racism happened. It's happening today, and that was the knock on the head. And it's like, why? Somebody needs to wake up.
Well, that's his flipping of the flag and going from color to black and white was his literal symbol of calling everyone that there's a distress in the nation, and more so. In the past, there have been criticism against Spike Lee that he's too over the head, he's didactic, and this and that. And I think this movie certainly can be viewed as didactic, but when you look at the time, it's like, okay, how much more evidence do you need? Like where the criticism is like, oh, just relax, calm down, everything's good. Like, no,
it's not. And it hasn't been for a long time. The only good that's happening right now is things are now out in the open, where there were people who just assumed that these things weren't happening, or people didn't really talk like this.
But you got the Felixes of the world.
Right. Where like someone like me, where I knew my whole life and I knew that there was no change and I knew that they were bad, and the guy who was running was so blatant, and I was confused at the beginning because I thought, well, he's pretty open, so I'm confused of why people are confused. So that's what confused me. And there's a great SNL skit where Dave Chappelle and Dave Chappelle and I think Chris Rock, they do this great skit when it's the night of the election, where they have their white liberal friends and they're so shocked that Hillary Clinton loses, and the two black guys are like, I don't know how you guys are shocked because we're used to this, but it's one of those things where maybe this movie can be a reminder for some folks, where it's like, hello, when you walk out the theater, these are things that's happening today. These are the language that we're hearing. People are calling people dogs, and
well, that's the thing. And unfortunately, I feel that we're at a point in our time where I don't know what is going to wake people up.
I don't think anything will.
I really, we're at, like, there is so much evidence and proof there. And if you're buying the mistruths, then you're buying the mistruths, and anything, whatever fact is thrown in your face, you're just going to deny. So you can get a person to watch this movie, and they're going to say they made it up. They're going to say, well, maybe that story happened, but it didn't happen that way. That they lied about here and there, and that they did it so they can get that ending. And it's like, it's a lot deeper than that. And that's where the ending really hit home. And there was a lot of mention about the ending prior to the release of this movie. People talked about.
I knew there was an ending.
I knew there was an ending.
The ending.
I was waiting for that ending.
But you knew about it before you saw the movie, right?
I did not.
Oh, you didn't?
All I knew was the ending was tough to watch. I was like, okay, when's it
But
gonna
that's
hit?
what you heard, right?
I've heard
That's
a few
all I heard.
reviews from Cannes where people were talking about the ending and was it needed, and maybe it wasn't needed. So I was like, what ending are they talking about?
There was a controversy about the end. Where some people felt, it wasn't needed, or this and that. And so I knew that there was an ending. And again, where I live, the theater I go to is a Cinemark Baldwin Hills, which is it's just straight up, it's a very urban audience that goes to that theater. And again, when the ending came, people, they fell back into their seats. It wasn't like they just quietly, they fell back into the seats. And what, we not that I forgot about the death, But I guess what really punctuated or accentuated things to me was, she was a white woman who was there at this rally opposing things, and she was taken out by idiocy and hatred, right?
Well, in a sense, by her own people.
Sure.
If you want to look at it from that.
Right.
But I think it impacts the audience. It impacted my audience because he makes no bones about putting her up in this big screen. And it just goes that hatred impacts everybody. And I'm not taking it away from color or race, religion. Obviously, it impacts other people far greater than it may impact me. And I understand that. But I think by putting that up there, it does impact the society. And again, the subtle thread becomes piano wire around the throat. But I thought it was brilliantly put in there. And I didn't find it to be like, you're beating me over the head. It's like, yeah, we're still dealing with it today.
Here's what the ending does. And Nakia, feel free to jump in on it. But, your audience, let's say primarily black, right? And
sure.
They slouch back because I feel it's like the reaction is, well, what can I do?
I heard crying.
Well, exactly,
in my audience.
because in that sense, what can I do? There's nothing for me to do. The audience I went to, believe it or not, the most widest audience you can imagine, and they were frozen because of guilt. And what it does by putting if you're not a minority and you see this, it creates that guilt because it turns it back on you. It's one thing. It would be one thing to, again, kill someone black and have that be sort of the ending version of it. But it's no different than Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Like, she fought for women's rights, and what she did was she fought for men's equality in terms of parenthood and raising a child, because she said, listen, all these gender laws are unfair to men equally as they are unfair to women. Right. And so when you look at it from that perspective, as you pointed out, Dimitri, this is what hit it home for me, is that racism affects both sides. Yeah. And if you could prove that that white racism affects white people negatively, then guess what? You can maybe turn the tide.
Yeah.
You hope. And I think that's the brilliance of the ending. And that's why I don't find that the ending was... it didn't hearken to me like, oh, Jesus, Spike, what am I, an idiot? Of course I can draw the parallel by myself. It was the way in which it faded into it and the way that it was intercut. Those scenes, the ones from Vice News, and, then there was the interview with David Duke. They just, and again, it goes to why doesn't a certain person just come out strongly and say, David Duke, I denounce you? Like, why doesn't a certain person say, Putin, you're a bad man? Why? And now, after watching the movie and you hear things that you go, oh, well, that's why.
Yeah.
Racist, and, oh, yeah, okay, that's what you want. Okay, all right. But we're not changing the tide because there are people who are so wrapped up that they continue to carry the water, and that's the biggest problem. So those people would go into this movie and say it's fake news,
right? Like David Duke himself.
Yeah, and I don't think he was portrayed. Look, I know that he was curious, David Duke. Yeah. I had read these stories where his only curiosity about the movie was how he was portrayed in it. It sounds like somebody else that we might know who'd be more curious about how it was portrayed, about a theme.
Right.
So, in Topher Grace's performance in this, too, if you were making like a full-on, like a Mel Brooks satire, let's say, right, you would have that character so overblown. Like, he would be like this racist buffoon, and you would laugh at him, and why you're laughing and who you're laughing at. You didn't play him this way. Yeah. It's not that kind of a movie. And I think that if David Duke were to watch this,
he's actually seen it.
He's been calling. I know we did the red carpet, and I talked to a few of the writers, and he said the writers were like, as of when we did the premiere, I think it was 2 weeks ago, the writer said that David Duke has been calling them. He called the real Ron Stallworth.
He did.
He did. Yeah, he's been calling everyone to try to like talk to everyone and figure out what's going on. The writer said their phone call wasn't as nice from David Duke. Topher Grace has been reporting that he's getting phone calls now, and it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's just like, but again, the way he was, you can't take the racist out of the man, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think that they played him very charismatic. Like, he did not look like a buffoon
Right.
at all. He just racist, but when you're head of the KKK, what else are you? So, again, and I think Topher Grace's performance of him, I thought, was really spot on, especially when you see the end clip, right? And Topher Grace said about filming it, he's like, well, this was definitely the juiciest part in the movie. He goes, it was the hardest. And he would say, yeah, there were, I had to do these things and say these horrible things. And he goes, but he goes, I had this amazing cast and crew around me, and Spike Lee was amazing because he would say, cut. He would walk over to me. He goes, it's all right, man. I know this is a hard day. Yeah. I know this is a hard day for everybody. He goes, it's a hard day for me to film this. He goes, but we got to do this. There's a reason why. You're doing great. And I go, these are kind of things that you don't, like, I don't necessarily hear about Spike Lee and working with his actors. And I said, I like that. That's really cool. He understands. He understands tough day shooting. Sort of reminded me of when we were talking about the movie. What was the last one? Detroit, right? With Catherine Bigelow. We had that one actor who's that racist, above and beyond racist cop, and like how he would like, this is the hardest scene for me to film. I'm not like that. And Topher Grace is like, yeah, this is the guy he was and is, and he's a monster, and I don't want to meet him, he said.
Right.
He goes,
he's like, I never.
Nope.
So I think a
don't
news
want to do it.
anchor asked, would you want to meet him? And he's like, why?
No.
No, he's like, I hate this guy.
No.
He's like, I don't want to meet him.
But I appreciate that he had support of cast and crew to go, yep, no, dude, tough day.
Yeah.
Get it. You did a really good job, but it's tough for all of us. Tough for me to do this. He goes, but you did a good job, man.
I like that a lot.
I want to say thanks. Yeah, it's really it's how a director should be on set. He should be a leader and support the cast and crew. So yeah, I like it.
Absolutely. And in fact, many people are touting this as like a return to form for Spike. And he said, what's the famous Mark Twain quote? My demise has been greatly exaggerated.
Oh, Spike.
So
I'm happy that this is the movie, and I'm happy that, Jordan Peele gave him that call, and I'm just happy that this is the movie where people are recognizing Spike. Because he's right, Spike, a lot of people were not happy with Spike, and Spike was one of the directors where you're like,
Well, he's a divisive director.
Yeah.
Okay, for good or for bad.
Right.
And he's somebody that I studied too, in film school. But, when you talk about Jordan Peele, right, it goes above and beyond this too, because this is it's a Blumhouse movie. I mean, it's released by Focus, right? So Jason Blum's name is also on this movie, as well as Jordan Peele's, who they released Get Out. You get it, and to their credit, it's like picking projects that go against your normal wheelhouse, which is horror. You can point to this and say it's horror too, but it's a different kind. It's amazing to me of the gift of picking projects and having your name on a project, that goes against what you normally do, but saying, hey, there's something in this. I'm going to contribute in one way, shape, or form. He helped boost Jordan Peele's, like Jason Blum. He's helped boost his career big time. And I think too, working Spike Lee. Their movies, the Blumhouse movies, some of them, like the Purge movies, they have a message to say. And I say good for them. I say, kudos, because while everybody's talking about the next Halloween movie, myself included, can't wait, it's nice to see the diversity that they're bringing, and that they don't shy away from the controversy. So
I agree.
Great.
not at all. And in fact, we'll talk box office, but just in general, I mean, this pretty much has unanimous, consensus how great it is. 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. A-, which is slightly lower than I would have expected on Cinema Score. But everyone else, across the board is saying what a great movie it is. And, I said this with Sorry to Bother You. I think this movie, even though it's in the summer, even though it's in August, should get some recognition at the Oscars.
Yes.
Whatever that may be, you can say screenplay, definitely some acting in there. Cinematography, I thought was great. A lot of great elements. Score for me in particular too. I really
Score
love
was
the score.
amazing.
Yeah, it was. It was really fantastic, and I think that Spike Lee, it even looked, at least for me, it looked a little bit different from some of his other movies. Although there were certain traits, like the end, like having the people on the dolly. Yeah. And so it's like, oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, I'm watching the Spike Lee movie, right? But another scene that was artfully done, but again, not beating you over the head, was the scene in which you thought I was earlier referencing, was that gentleman who came to the school to do the speech, Kwame. Yeah. And number one, the actor who did that was
Corey Hart is amazing.
Yeah. He was amazing, and he's in the movie for 5-10 minutes. But he gives this amazingly, and it's a charged speech that starts off slow and gets bigger and bigger, more energized. And I loved how the way you'd see the audience, but then you saw scene. like 3 people, and then it would fade back to him, and then you always saw 3 people, and then it would home in on Stallworth, because things were dawning on him, and you saw that he was actually listening and paying attention, and it was a really, it was an artfully done scene that from a film person, you go, well, that's really artfully done, but anybody else, it doesn't matter. It still plays very well. The message is there. It gets put across. You understand. Now Stallworth gets it, and you get where he's coming from. It really was a masterfully shot and edited scene, I felt.
Which brings up, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Patrice. So, I know we're running out of time, but let's talk about her. She's the opposition to Ron and offers different perspectives and yet pushes him forward. Like when you talk about a strong woman character, kudos to her. She did a wonderful job as an actress, and the character herself was fantastic.
Yeah, Laura Harrier.
Yeah.
And she was wonderful. I mean,
she gave me like that Angela Davis feel. Very strong. It reminded me so much of not the KKK. Sorry, the Black Panthers. God, I'm so sorry. Not the KKK, the Black Panthers, and how they talk about the strong Black woman in the Black Panthers, and her character was just so amazing. And how I love how she challenged him, because even when she found out that he was a cop and she didn't care, and she's like, "This is what I'm standing for, and you're still a pig." And I just loved it. And I thought she did such an amazing job.
Though, I'm glad. Okay, so you brought up the word pig, right? And he's like, so here we have Stallworth, and he goes, you don't really need to use that word. Well, why not? He's like, they're not all. And now we know why he's arguing that point, right? But they don't, and his points to that argument are all valid. He's like, we're not, and that again too, it's sort of flipping certain things, because here we have the black cop who's infiltrated the Klan and is now telling other black people who don't know that he's a cop, don't use the word pig, because we're not all like that. And so I'm watching the scene going, oh, this is a really interesting scene. and he's like, because you're calling me a pig, and I'm not like that. And he goes, and I know you don't know the truth, but his points are still valid. Yeah. And it was just really interesting. So there was a prejudice there too, albeit a warranted prejudice, because that asshole gets taken down at the end. But they weren't all like that. A lot of them who were on Stallworth's team were there for the cause. Right. They were there. They were like, yeah, and they were like they were listening to the phone conversations, laughing their asses off, as they should be. It's so you were, again, it's one of the geniuses, I think, of this screenplay and performance. So and she was fantastic, and again, it just goes to show. I mean, she's
very different than her Spider-Man Homecoming role. I was shocked when I was like,
When I found out about that too, I was like,
seen her with the afro. I was like, whoa, that's different. So I love that she took the challenge. And same thing with John David Washington. The fact that,
God, yeah.
I mean, one, his dad is Denzel Washington. His mother's Pauletta Washington. So not only do you have that, you have a kid who played football and he was in Ballers and he was in like Malcolm X when he was like 9. But to have this leading role and do such an outstanding job, and though he sounds like Denzel, you forget that he's Denzel's son and he's just John David Washington. I think he did an outstanding job.
I didn't view him as anything but, like, to be honest, I actually viewed him as Ron Stallworth.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
You know, it was a testament
Same
to...
here.
He did such a good job.
And he was like so good, and everybody else around him, but he was fantastic. And again, he was, Spike Lee pulled out like an incredible performance. Going back to Laura too, like, very attractive woman, very strong woman. I mean, this is a character that has the goods and that can stand up to a Ron Stallworth, right? And that to me is equally as important, because if you're going to pick a woman for that role, that actor has to, like, you have to believe that this person is going to be able to pull all this off, believes in the cause, and such. And I never doubted that character for a minute. And she also had the tenderness in her as well. I mean, I really did love that character, and you're right. And again, we have to go back to that woman, because she too is another strong character, albeit for the
Connie.
the bad scene. But Connie, again, she was that actress, Ashley Atkinson she was fantastic.
The women did an amazing job.
Everybody stood up.
The whole cast just.
Yeah,
wow.
and again, I just go back to me, performance relies not just on the actor, but a lot of it relies on the director, and the type of performance they want to pull out of their actors. And I think here, like, Spike Lee really pulled out some great performances of people that we don't necessarily know. They're not household names. Denzel, when you have Denzel working in a movie and he and Spike have worked on a couple of movies together, you kind of expect it.
Yes.
Right? You kind of expect this great performance. Over here, I didn't really notice any of these people, except for Adam Driver. And like I see him, okay, this guy should be recognized.
Yep.
She should be recognized. And they're not in a superhero movie.
And it's to your point where, people think that, and people in the movie world think that they can't make these great movies without like A-list names. And Spike did a thing where he bought probably some people that like you said, you've seen before here and there, and they killed it. And it's such an amazing job, where I think you're right, Phil. I think this movie should be recognized, and I've been hearing little chats about some Oscar recognition. I don't know what it's going to be, but
we'll see.
We shall see.
The good news, when you talk about that, like, you kind of hedge your bets with having actors like this who are really passionate. I mean, overall, the budget wasn't that big for this, which is great. When you talk about Blumhouse, they're known for that. The fact that it made $10 million, roughly, almost $11 million in its opening weekend, and so forth, I think it's going to have legs as time goes by.
But I want to put everything in perspective too. $15 million. Right, so when you're talking about Blumhouse, like, that's budget-wise, that's their wheelhouse.
That's a mega.
Right?
Well,
that's even a little bit more. Yeah, I mean, that's a little bit higher than what they might normally do, right? So, and you're right. $10.8 million. Let's just call it $11 million for opening weekend. It came in at number 5, but here's the deal. It was going up against movies like The Meg, which was opening up on 3,000 plus locations, theaters around the country. This was on 1,100. 1,100 plus, okay? So, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. 1,500. 1,512 to be exact, to put a fine point on it. So it opens up at number 5 with a per screen or per theater average of $7,000. So that's really pretty decent. Coming in number 5 with the movies that are out there, that's in your top 5. You're dealing with The Meg, you're dealing with The Mission Impossible. I don't have the top 10, but you're dealing with bigger movies. So this one, the marketing, I thought really worked and helped. The reviews, obviously. I think it's topicality, too. really helped push this along. And I think the conversation hopefully will get more people out there.
Yeah.
And so that it's not going to necessarily fall off a cliff. It is definitely one of Spike Lee's higher openings, you know, recently, anyway. So we'll see where this ends up, but I think its longevity is going to be its history, whether it's home entertainment or whether it's used in school in history classes, because I really do think that threading together 30, 40 years, right? I think that's a very important part, and I think from a social sciences perspective, like it can be studied that way, and it can also be studied in film school, as
I
well.
agree.
So.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully, if you need a refresher, revisit us. And
Hey, if you need a bonus thing, a substance for your Blu-ray.
Hey.
there you go. Also, you know, I look at it. We've been blessed in the past couple of weeks, whether it's Blind Spotting, Sorry to Bother You, really great movies. So if this is kind of in your wheelhouse, definitely this, you know, that's kind of a great trilogy of movies to also watch. But we do have to wrap up, unfortunately. In the meantime, you can interact with us. First off, you can do so in the comments section. By all means, this is such a divisive movie that do let us know your thoughts, your perspectives. To be honest, I even welcome the hate. Now, usually that means something completely different. In this case, you know what? I'm willing to have a meaningful conversation. Don't just say, like, blacks suck or whatever, or Jews suck. Legitimately, if you want to have a conversation, you are a hateful person, I will have that conversation with you.
Well, I never care. I don't care if people dislike a movie. I really don't. Just give me a thoughtful reason why you disliked it. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to agree with that, but so long as you're putting it down in a thoughtful way. Listen, like I said, don't come out and attack us and say, you're nothing, you're just towing the fake news line. Then I'm just going to not pay attention. I don't care if you like or dislike a movie or agree with me or disagree with me. It's just the way in which it's presented. I don't mind you disliking a movie, but just do it for the right reasons and say why. Be a little bit smart about it. I think this is a really great movie to discuss. Both after you see it in a movie theater, along here in our format, which is I think the best format in which movies are broken down, and whether you're at a bar or whatever. Like it's really a solid, it's a good talk piece to get things out in the open. So,
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, also for more specific, more direct interactions, at DMovie1701 for Dimitri.
Yes, please.
Absolutely.
I was a big hit on Twitter this week for some stupid reason. Yeah. But hey, I love it.
Let's make it 2 weeks in a row. And at Kiki Boom Boom.
Don't judge my name. I'm just there. At Kiki Boom Boom. I'm a good time.
What other shows do you do?
Right now, all of my shows are hiatus, but on Wednesdays I do a lot of reality. So I do Jersey Shore, so much fun, and BlacKkKlansman Chicago on Wednesdays.
Awesome. And I'm at Phil Svitek. Thank you guys for joining us. We're at the Popcorn Talk on Twitter and Instagram and all that fun stuff.
At Movie Anatomy, right?
At Movie Anatomy for this specific show. Of course, you can check out our library of past shows. We have quite a bit. And of course, we've got lots of stuff coming up, whether it's The Meg, whether it's Crazy Rich Asians, so many good things. So keep subscribed. Subscribe if you haven't done so. We'll see you next time.
And keep going to the movies.
Yes.
That's right.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of its owners or principals.